Hello, 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 friends. How y'all doing? How y'all feeling? I want to welcome you to Cultivate Your Mental Wealth. For those of you who may not know, my name is Joyce Ozeh, and I am a first generation Nigerian American living in Chicago. I am also a civil rights attorney, but most importantly, I am a mental health advocate with lived experience, specifically with anxiety and depression. What does that mean by lived experience? What does it mean by mental wealth when I say cultivate your mental wealth? Well, lived experience means I've lived what we talk about on this show, okay? I know what it feels like to go through major depression and generalized anxiety. I also know what it feels like to live in a place of wellness. It's what I've been able to achieve for the past few years, and it's what I believe is possible for people within our communities and beyond. I believe that we were designed to live in the overflow. So I wasn't designed just to get well, and you aren't designed just to get well for yourself. We are designed to get well for ourselves so that we can overflow and share that abundance and wellness with those around us who may not have the tools, the resources, or even the courage to tap into wellness. So let's think mental wealth, let's think abundance, and let's go on this journey together. Does that sound good? Great. So, before we get into the meat and potatoes, as I like to call it, because I like to eat, before we get into the meat and potatoes of today's show, let's run through what we're going to be talking about today. First of all, you all know I love a check in. I love talking with y'all. So, feel free to let me know where you're tuning in from, where you're listening from, where you're watching from. I also want to know just how you're doing and how you're feeling. One of my favorite parts about this show is that we get to be honest and real in this space and talk about our feelings. So let me know how you're doing and how you're feeling. I already see Kenya from Chicago. I'm from Chicago. I'm in Chicago. You know I love me a Chicago chick. So nice to have you with us, Kenya. Thank you for joining the conversation. Continue to drop in the chat where you're tuning in from and let us know how you're feeling, how you're doing in this new year. Along with check ins, I also want to talk about today just going back into what we were initially discussing about the year of the renewed mind. For those of you who joined our opening show 2 weeks ago, this is what I'm calling the year of the renewed mind, where we learn how to renew our mind and intentionally cultivate renewal for all of our spaces, our personal life, our friendships, our workspaces, our home life. Cultivating a renewed mind is where we can begin and find wellness. So, the year of the renewed mind, all of our themes, all of our series are going to circle around that ultimate theme. So, we're going to be talking about part 2 today. I also want to get into another check-in towards the end of the show, what to expect for next week, and also practical pushes so that you leave today's discussion with tangible steps towards wellness. So again, let me know where you're tuning in from. And for those of you who may not want to comment, first and foremost, I want to thank everyone who has been messaging me on our BDO email, and that is comethrive247@gmail.com. That's comethrive247@gmail.com, because wellness is available for us 24/7. Thank you for your messages. Stay tuned for the end of the show because I have a surprise. For those of you who have been emailing, the email listed below, comethrive247@gmail.com. I see the comments rolling in. Continue to drop where you're tuning in from. Gloria, I see you. Mel, I see you. North Carolina, beautiful. Let me know. Let's discuss. Let's do this together, folks. Okay, so let's get into our main discussion. But before we go into what we're going to be talking about in part 2 of our series tonight, I want to do what we've come to call here affectionately as setting the room. It's Tuesday, y'all. The week has just begun. There's probably a lot on your plate, a lot that you haven't gotten to, a lot that you may be beating yourself up about. It's also the end of the month. Some of y'all have been waiting for January to end. Maybe it was a tough start to the new year. Maybe for some of you who have been going through a lot, this month went by so quickly, and perhaps you weren't able to enjoy it and be intentional in the ways that you want to be intentional. Well, let's just set the room right now. We don't ignore what we're going through or act like it doesn't exist, but when we're in this space, this is our time and this is our conversation. You are free to be yourself. You are free to let go of all of the pressures of the day, of the week, of the month, from friends, from family, from work, and to just be present and exist. This is what you are doing for you, for the wellness of your mind, for the wellness of your being, and you get to participate in this space honestly and guilt-free. So breathe, let go, and let's talk. Okay, folks, thank you again for being here. And as we were saying, this is a series on cultivating renewal, which is just a part of cultivating the renewed mind, which is what we're going to be discussing this entire year. Part 1, we talked about what it means or what it can mean to cultivate renewal for the year, why it's important to be intentional in our cultivation, like gardening, hence all the plants behind me, and what practical steps we can take as we consider cultivation. If you missed it, fear not. You can always go to BDO's YouTube page, type in my name, and you'll be able to see the show from 2 weeks ago. There are also videos on our Facebook page, so scroll through the video section just to catch yourself up. But part 2 of this cultivating renewal for the new year is going to be focused on cultivating resistance. Cultivating resistance. Again, let's go through why I use the word cultivating. It's part of my show title. It's part of this sub-series. And the reason I use that word is because you cannot cultivate something without intention. Cultivation inherently necessitates being intentional. And I think the lie that is often fed to us is that either you have joy or you don't. Either you have wellness or you don't. Either you have happiness or you don't. What I'm here to tell you is that joy is something that must be practiced and cultivated, as is wellness. And even more importantly, as we're thinking about wellness, we must consider resilience in that calculation. Why? What is the significance of resilience and how can we better understand it? I'm glad you asked. So, first of all, resilience generally just means the ability to adapt well in the face of adversity, trauma, or significant stress. Funny enough, I was filming a Black History Month video with my office today, and a part of the question that they asked was how I see Blackness and what singular thing about being Black do I love and honor the most? And it's really hard to narrow it down because there are so many powerful things about my Black identity that I celebrate and I honor. But I believe that our collective resilience as people is the most powerful and beautiful aspect of being Black. I'm not saying other communities are not resilient. What I am saying is right now, I celebrate the resilience of Black people. The things that we've had to overcome, the violence, the racism, the subjugation that we have been able to continually rise up against, and to be joyful, to be successful, to be healthy, and to be whole, that is powerful and that's resilience. And I want to say, when it comes to your individual mental wellness, you too can cultivate the resilience that is so common in Black people in our communities. And the way we do that is through this conversation that we're having right now, but more importantly, through intentionality. And it's important to cultivate that because once we can build resilience, we are unstoppable. What force can come against resilience? There is nothing that can tear resilience down. There is nothing that can keep you from your goals, your wellness, and your objectives with resilience. This is why this perseverance and this ability to overcome is so critical, especially as we start the new year and we work on our goals, we work on our purposes, we work on meeting objectives that we set out for ourselves. Resilience is what is going to help us meet these objectives. So I hope I've sold to you how important and how possible resilience is, because I want to get into how we can look at resilience in different aspects or contexts, okay? So, how many of you guys have heard resilience just generally beyond what I've talked about, even just being Black? You've heard it said that, oh, Black people are resilient people. But how many of you know that resilience actually looks different in different contexts and different aspects of your life? So there's emotional resilience, social resilience, and professional resilience. The reason why it's important to identify the different contexts of resilience, because it allows us to practice and present resilience differently. So, in our social resilience and our emotional resilience, or in more personal or intimate settings, the way we overcome or persevere may look different than in a professional setting. For example, resilience for me in a professional setting may not be shouting from the mountaintops, but it could still look like professional boundaries, or it could still look like me setting goals for myself of things I need to do in my work and telling myself, Joyce, you can finish this project. You are resilient. Joyce, you can meet this deadline. It Depending on the context, it informs the way I approach whatever challenge that I need to overcome. You wouldn't overcome a intimate relationship issue in the exact same way you'd overcome an issue with a coworker. In an intimate relationship, there still needs to be resilience, but you're able to speak more vulnerably about things. You're able to let certain walls down versus a professional setting where there could be vulnerability, but you have to be mindful of how you're presenting and how you're coming across. I had a whole series on boundaries and professionalism and boundaries in your personal life. Again, go to BDO's YouTube page and look up this show and look up boundaries, because I talk about that more. But I just believe it was important right now to identify in different contexts how resilience is important, but how it could look differently. So now that we know that resilience is one important, and how we practice resilience differently in different contexts, like socially or professionally or intimately in our relationships, I want to talk about some myths of resilience. What are some resilient myths? So, one of the largest myths that I want to call out and debunk and erase is this idea that resilient people don't experience distress. So if I want to be a resilient person, I'm not allowed to say that I'm stressed out. Or if I were truly a resilient person, then I wouldn't be overwhelmed by a situation. I don't know how many of you can relate to this, but I'm more of a perfectionist than I thought I was. And when I started getting well, as soon as I would feel stress or sadness, I would contact my pastor and be like, oh my gosh, what's happening? I thought I was free, or I thought it was in a place of wellness when it comes to depression or it comes to anxiety. Why am I feeling sad? Why am I feeling down? What is going on? And he would laugh at me. My therapist would also laugh at me and very patiently say, just because you are experiencing sadness or experiencing stress, it doesn't mean that you are doing wellness wrong. I want to say the same thing when it comes to resilience. Resilient people actually do experience stress and trauma and challenges. But to be a resilient person, in fact, you have to experience those things, or else you wouldn't have anything to overcome. So never shame yourself about your emotions, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But I don't want this myth that if you're resilient, you wouldn't identify stress or challenges. In fact, there wouldn't be resilience without those challenges, right? Because then what are you overcoming? Another myth that I want to debunk, name, and eradicate is resilient people are just born that way. And some people are resilient and other people are weak or they're not. That is a myth. What if I told you that resilience is a practice? Resilience is something that is built and it is not something that is innate. The reason why I love how resilience shows up in Black people is because when push came to shove, and it certainly did and still does in our communities, we were able collectively to build a resilience through grit and practice and, frankly, necessity that has carried us to this very day. That just shows you that resilience isn't necessarily a thing that you are just born with. It is okay and most common that it is something that you develop. You grow into resilience. You practice it daily and regularly. And if you're asking me how to practice resilience, stay tuned. I got some tips for you. But I want to call out this myth so that we don't spend time shaming ourselves if we're not there yet. If you want to be the kind of person who sees a challenge and says, I am going to overcome this thing, it is okay if you're not quite there yet. It is okay if challenges still kind of knock you down, disorient you, or discourage you. In fact, as I'm saying this, almost a year or two ago, I would look at my husband and be like, I want to be the kind of person that sees a challenge and gets excited, because I never used to look at challenges as a way to be excited. My husband's the kind of person who will see a challenge and he would think, I can do this. Back in the day, I was the kind of person who would see a challenge and I would think, I need a nap. Challenges automatically exhausted me, and I automatically felt like I couldn't do it. As I'm speaking to you right now, I realized literally in this moment that I am now in the place where I see challenges and I say, I can do this. I can overcome this. Yes, I'm tired. Yes, I'm a little bit overwhelmed. Yes, I have other things that I want to be doing. But this challenge is not going to be the thing that overtakes me. I have survived harder than this. I have survived worse than this. And I recognize that in this moment, I may be feeling a little nervous, a little anxious, but I will get on the other side of this challenge. And it just took this moment for me to realize I'm not where I was. And again, if that's possible for me, Resilience and building resilience and telling yourself a new narrative is so possible for you. Thank you to those who have been joining us. I'm going to pause a little bit because I see some new folks. Patsy, thank you for joining us all the way from Georgia. If you're just tuning in, we are having part 2 of our Cultivate a Renewed Mind series for the new year. And we're talking about how to cultivate and be intentional about building resilience in the new year so that you can overcome the challenges that will come for you as you focus and move towards your purpose and move towards wellness. Don't be scared of the challenges. You'll overcome them, and we'll continue to talk about how. So let's get into building blocks of resilience. What are some of the building blocks? How many of y'all are familiar with the term emotional intelligence? In this context of building resilience, I want to talk about it as emotional management or emotional regulation. This is one of my favorite tools to navigate, process, and talk about because emotional management and emotional processing is really what helped get me healthy into a mental place where my mind was just healthier. What does that look like? So, emotional intelligence is a form of resilience, actually. And it's not just emotional intelligence as in, I'm really good with people, but it could also include just being aware of and effectively managing your emotions. I'm going to say that again. Being aware of and effectively managing your emotions. But what can this look like? Let's look at mindfulness and resilience. Now, there are a lot of definitions about mindfulness and meditation. When I talk about mindfulness, I mean being present in your emotions. That is not just feeling or experiencing what your body is telling you you are emoting or feeling, but pausing, realizing, let's say, that your heart is pounding, and being able to say, I recognize that right now I am feeling fearful, or I recognize and I realize that right now I am feeling anxious. And I'm not going to gloss over it. I'm going to listen to what my body is trying to tell me, and I'm going to see how I can redirect this into something that is more productive, that is true, and that is healthy. That's what I mean when I talk about mindfulness with our emotions. But let's get into this for a little bit. Did you know that emotions in and of themselves are not wrong and they are not shameful? How many of y'all have shamed yourself for experiencing a certain emotion, whether it's fear or anger or even happiness after maybe a tragedy, and you feel like I should not be experiencing happiness in my body or something bad just happened? How many of you have shamed yourself for that? I want to let you know that there is nothing wrong or shameful when it comes to your emotions. And in fact, emotions are actually a primal sensation and a reaction in our bodies that we all universally share as human beings. Universally, we have the ability to emote or to experience the emotion of fear, of happiness, of anger, all of the range of emotions. Do not shame yourself for those experiences in your body because they are natural. But what is really unique is that your emotions are actually different than your feelings. I'll say that again. Your emotions are different than your feelings. There is an entire psychological school of thought that believes your feelings are actually formed from your thoughts and your beliefs. That is, what you believe to be true will inform how you feel. We'll have a whole episode on emotions versus feelings and how to navigate that, but I want to identify it quickly here because it's an important thing for us to understand, okay? So, for example, Two people can experience the exact same emotion, which we've defined as a primal sensation or reaction in our bodies that is universal, that's generally shared. And even though they're experiencing the exact same emotion, their feelings can be totally different. What can that look like? Let me tell you. Most of y'all who've been watching the show know that I'm an introvert. And before I have to get on stage or before I have to even film the show, I sometimes get a little sweaty in my palms. Sometimes my heartbeat increases a little bit. It's gotten better since it's been over a year. But sometimes my palms get sweaty and my heartbeat increases, right? What my body is experiencing is called an emotion. Now, when I was younger, the feeling that would come from that emotion was, oh my gosh, I have stage fright. I'm so nervous. I'm so anxious. I'm so afraid. The feeling that now comes from that emotion of my heart going a little faster is, I'm just so excited to do my show. I'm just so excited to perform and have this conversation with people from all across the country, all across the world. So the reason my palms are sweaty and the reason my heartbeat is elevated is because I'm feeling excitement. Wild, right? The same emotion, but different feelings about that emotion because of my thoughts and beliefs. And I was able to change my thoughts and basically convince myself that I was feeling excitement because I was prepared and ready to go on stage. And that is how I turned stage fright into an adrenaline rush, an excitement. That is how emotions differ from feelings, and how your feelings can inform your emotions depending on what you think or believe to be true. What does this have to do with resilience? This is what I mean by emotional management, and this is how you build resilience. You may be facing a challenge, whether it's something within your family, something within your health, something at work, and your body is reacting to that challenge. Your mind is going to begin to tell you a narrative. And I'm here to tell you that you have the power to take control of the narrative that your mind tells you. And that gives you the power to change your feelings about that narrative and about that event. So it doesn't mean that you have to make your challenges a positive thing, but it does mean that you get to write a new story about those challenges, one where you are victorious, one where you overcome, one where you are healthy, one where you don't have to be the victim, one where you can be the survivor, one where you get to be the fighter. That is how you build resilience. You look at that challenge and you decide to tell yourself, your mind, your soul, a new story about it. Again, name the challenge as it is. Don't have to sugarcoat it or act like it doesn't exist, but tell yourself a new story. You sing a new song and you start to build and develop different feelings about that challenge by having different thoughts towards it. And that's a building block for resilience. Again, we'll go more into this emotion and feeling connection and how our thoughts can inform our feelings and change things for us. But I really want you to grasp this opportunity. So, along with telling yourself a new narrative, also think about building a tribe. Rely on your chosen and biological family. What I mean by that is you may not have the best relationship with your birth mother or birth father or siblings, but you get to choose your tribe. It could be people within your church, your neighborhood, your book club, your swim class, whatever community, build that community. Be honest with that community so that they know what you're going through and they can help you on your journey with resilience. Make sure that the people that you're choosing for your community are also people that are resilient minded. There are many people who love you who may not be mentally well, and that means they may actually speak negatively or speak fear into your life or your situation. As we're talking about strategies to build resilience, you want to make sure that the people around you and what they're speaking align with your resilience and where you're trying to go. It is okay to distance yourself from people who don't. It is perfectly okay to love from afar. Well, that is the main part of the show and this conversation. I so appreciate y'all for joining. Charles, I see that you're joining us from the Caribbean, Antigua, West Indies. I've never been. You got to tell me how it is, and I really hope to go one day. Do not go anywhere because we have so much more. Sherry, you're so welcome. Thank you for joining the conversation. Again, continue to drop comments. I will follow up on Facebook. And if you want to have a private conversation, I'll let you know how to do that in a little bit. But next time, it is Black History Month. Here in the States, in the month of February, in the US, we celebrate Black History Month and the richness of our culture and the richness of our stories. And in fact, the theme for our series in Black History Month in February is beyond cultivating a renewed mind, but the impact of storytelling on mental wellness. The impact of storytelling on mental wellness. What I mean by that is, as Black people, we've always been storytellers. And did you know that when we share our story or share our testimony, we cultivate spaces of survival, of joy, of health for not just ourselves, but for each other. And we're going to get into that some more during Black History Month. So you want to stay tuned. If you join late, fear not. You can always go back and watch. Again, you can go to the Facebook page or YouTube to get some more information. I also want to let you know I have been promising those who have emailed me and the show at comethrive247@gmail.com. I've been promising y'all that I was going to do a show with you, that I was going to showcase you. Well, guess what? In February, we are showcasing the special stories for our cherished listeners. And what I want folks to share is any story about how they cultivate renewal or their journey of mental wellness. Share your story with me. Or you can share a story about how you cultivate renewal in your mind, whether it's meditation, writing. Drop a comment or email at comethrive247@gmail.com. And I promise to feature you, yes, you, during Black History Month, a snippet of your story, and that's going to be part of our series. If you want to join, make sure you email comethrive247@gmail.com. For those of you who've already shared your stories, I will be highlighting them through the month of February. And now, time for our practical pushes of the week. Stay tuned. Okay, friends, so this is a part of the show where we get into some practical tips so that we can move through the week empowered. And this week, we're going to move through the week with resilience. I've got some homework for you. I want us to focus on building a resilience plan for the new year. Do not let this overwhelm you. Let me explain to you what I mean by a resilience plan. It's less daunting than it sounds. A resilience plan just means incorporating elements like support networks, coping strategies, and self-care practices so that you have a plan in place for when challenges come. We know how to set our goals, we know how to set our resolutions, we know how to dream big. But what happens when you get pushback or when you get discouraged as you're on your way to achieving your goals for the new year? You don't want to get to the mountain and then not know what to do. So let's be intentional about building a resilience plan. And I'm just going to give you a few things to think about this week to help you prepare and build a plan. I was actually speaking to a coworker today, and she's going into a case that's going to be very difficult for her emotionally. And she kept on saying, I'm going to be looking out for my mental health. I'm going to be looking out for my mental health. And I was so inspired by that I want us to be able to do the same for each other and for ourselves first and foremost. So, in this building of a resilience plan, I want us to think about cultivating communities of support. We talked about the importance of building a tribe, our chosen family, biological family, close friends. Well, your community of support is like your tribe. I think that everyone should speak to a therapist. You don't need to wait till you're not well to process your life. Everyone can benefit from processing with a healthcare professional. So, our plan in our building resilience includes getting connected with therapy services, getting connected with intimate friends that speak life into us, getting more intimately connected with our church groups or other interest groups so that we can meet regularly with people in person and help get support before we go through the challenges that we face. Another part about building a resilience plan is thinking about coping and self-care strategies. Let me tell you, self-care is more than bubble baths and candles. I like both of them. But you don't have to limit yourself to just those two things. And self-care is for everyone, not just women. So, what could self-care look like? I want us to lean into creative outlets. It could be starting a pottery class, it could be signing up for a cooking class. Maybe you can't afford to sign up for a cooking class. Well, guess what? YouTube is free. Go on YouTube. There are tons of videos for cooking or even just generally on the internet. Look up instructional videos on how to cook your favorite recipes or try a new recipe. All of these creative outlets are part of our resilience plan because it allows us to lean into a different side of ourselves when we're facing challenges that gives us the release that we need to persevere and to move forward. I also want us to do some nice things for ourselves. That coworker I was telling you about gets a massage once a month. That may sound indulgent, or getting your nails done or joining a gym, but let me tell you, you deserve the indulgence. You deserve to have something that you can look forward to and say, this is my time of total retreat, because that helps us as we're going through things that are challenging to think, okay, this is going to be a tough week, but by Friday, I'll be getting a massage. Or by Friday, I'm taking myself on a really nice walk through the park. Or I'm calling a very good friend. Or I'm going to take myself out for ice cream at an actual ice cream shop that's around the corner from my house. Something rich and indulgent. It doesn't have to cost money, but it has to bring joy because you deserve it. These are my tips for building a resilience plan as you face challenges this year. And I promise you, resilience is a practice, but it is possible. Wellness is possible. I believe in you. So go thrive. See you in 2 weeks.